Salarah Starre is a UK-based advanced law of attraction teacher trainer, coach, public speaker, and leading wellness expert. She will share life-changing wisdom about the law of attraction and how you can use this powerful universal law to build a foundation for bigger and bolder manifesting results. It is time to create the life you deserve, and with Salarah's help, you will.
And a very warm welcome to Manifesting Made Easy with myself, Salarah Starre. And today we are going to be discussing how to heal the grief that's blocking your manifestation power and finally attract what you deserve. We're going to be looking at how grief builds in the body and what it really means to heal it on deep levels, and how your energy and your manifestation power can shift when you finally face the pain that you have been carrying around. For those of you that are new to my podcast, I'm a manifestation and mindset coach, a subconscious reprogramming guide, and someone who believes healing is about embodiment, not performance. I work with those who are done playing small and who are ready to shift what's really running the show so that they can become magnetic to the life that has been waiting for them. And today's topic is very close to my heart. Unexpressed grief and the connection to our body is what we're going to be talking about today. And we often hear sayings like energy attracts like energy, and that to manifest something, we must become an energetic match for it. And yeah, we may understand that on a logical level, it makes sense, but actually the embodiment of that wisdom is a whole other conversation. So even though that's true, what I find that doesn't get talked about enough in the manifestation space, and why people feel like the manifestations take forever and sometimes get the opposite or sometimes don't come at all, is because most of our manifesting energy is not created on the conscious level. It's not created on the surface. So just like an iceberg where 99% of its mass sits beneath the water, our emotional frequency is also shaped by what lives beneath our conscious awareness. So even if we're affirming positivity, we're visualizing the life that we want, we're taking aligned action, we're doing the mindset work, if there is unresolved grief, and I'm going to talk about the different levels and layers of grief, because you may have grief you don't know you're carrying. So if there's unresolved grief, suppressed emotion, or old pain lingering beneath the surface, that becomes the dominant frequency. And that's why we don't get the results that we want. Not because we're doing something wrong, but because the body and the subconscious are honest. And what we give out, we generally tend to get back. So if we are subconsciously giving out pain and worry and grief and fear, we may experience more of it. And this is the reason why. So when we feel stuck in our manifestations, and when we're doing everything right, so to speak, but life still feels heavy, it feels disconnected, it feels like it's off, it feels misaligned, it's often not a failure, it's an invitation. It's a whisper from the grief, from the heartache, from the trauma, asking to be seen, asking to be felt, asking to be resolved, to be met, to be released, to be honored. And this is definitely not to punish us, although sometimes it feels like it's a punishment. But this is actually designed to set us free. So let's look at the types of grief that someone might carry. So definitely the death of a loved one. There's family, a partner, a friend, the loss of a child, whether it's miscarriage or estrangement, or in other ways, end of a romantic relationship, breakup, divorce, separation, loss of a beloved pet, loss of a job, loss of identity as well. Sometimes becoming a mother or a father, or retiring, or the empty nest syndrome, a spiritual awakening, or coming out. They can all be types of grief that we carry. It can also be grief of the version of yourself that you used to be. And that could be before any health diagnosis, aging, chronic illness. It could also be grieving the loss of what could have been, the loss of dreams, future plans, whether it's infertility or missed milestones or unrealized goals. It could be moving house, moving country, moving city, and the loss of the old community, the familiarity, the stability. Grief of a parent that you never had. Somebody perhaps was emotionally unavailable, and as a result, you suffered a lot. Could have been abusive parent, an absent parent, grief from childhood neglect. I think you're getting the picture here, right? It shows up in so many different ways. The loss of safety after unexpected trauma, even unexpected trauma. Grief for the world even. Financial loss, instability, loss of trust in people, in systems, even in yourself. I could go on and on and on. So grief lives within us unless it has the opportunity to be seen, held, and resolved. And it's, like I said, not often talked about in its link to manifestation, but it absolutely should be, because it impacts massively our energetic vibration, our power, our magnetism, the pull, the natural magnetic pull that we have. Because true manifestation, when we're not being held back, if you like, by these heavier, denser emotions, means things come to us with ease and with grace. And we are in a state of allowing. We don't need to work as hard to get what it is that we want in our manifestation practice. So let's talk about grief. I know we've shared the various types of grief. But grief, not the kind that we just cry about once, but the kind that lingers. It lingers quietly and silently inside the body. The kind that gets stuck because we maybe never had space to express it. We never had permission to express it. We never had the ability to really feel it, because it's when you feel, you heal. And when you heal, that's when you become powerful. This is layers and layers of grief from years ago. Grief that maybe we've minimized. Grief that maybe we have justified or intellectualized. The grief from that betrayal, from that family rupture, from transition, the loss, even from the parts of ourselves that we had to abandon in order to keep going. Who has time to process the grief that we hold on these deep levels? We have to pull our socks up and we have to get up, dust ourselves off, and we have to keep going. We've got to pay the bills. We've got things that need doing. We don't have time to be able to stop and take ourselves off to process a lot of this. And a lot of the time, especially when we're younger, we don't even know that we need to. We almost mirror our adults and society. And as a result, because our pain and because our loss is being justified or minimized in one way or another or dismissed, we learn to do that to ourselves as well. And we think that we're holding it together, but actually all that grief has to go somewhere. And if it can't come out, it's going to go inward. I've been on a journey with this whole grief my whole life. I haven't known about it for much of it for the aforementioned reasons, but I've been on a personal journey with this in the last couple of years, not the whole time, but become more and more aware of the importance of connecting with it and healing it. And the layers of grief, I could go on and on about my own grief, the compounded grief of losing my dad, especially when things were left unsaid. That's been very challenging. The grief of losing my best friend last year. That was exceptionally challenging. The grief of holding my daughter together whilst her boyfriend died. And the grief of relationships, friendships, romantic relationships ending, and painful patterns and cycles that lead up to these, and holding everything else in the background at the same time. It's a lot. It's a lot to hold. What we often get wrong about healing grief is what I would like to discuss. In actual fact, I'd like to take away that word wrong, because I don't believe there's such a thing as right and wrong per se. There's different ways of dealing with things and different outcomes. We may not like the outcome we want, therefore we label it wrong, but it's a learning curve. It's part of the journey. We often think that by talking about grief, we are energizing it. We often think that when we're talking about grief, we're moving it out of our system. And yeah, to a certain extent, talking often helps. But when we find ourselves looping and find ourselves either suffering from depression or anxiety or other physical ailments, which I'm going to go into a bit more in a moment, that's when we know that there's more work to do. When no matter what you're doing, counseling, EFT, hypnotherapy, trying to block it out, and it's still not working, that's when we know that there's more work. But grief isn't just a story that we tell. We may tell the story over and over again, feeling like a victim of the story, and quite often we are a victim of that story. But in order to become highly magnetic, we need to learn to move from victim to victor and learn how to process this grief in a deeply cleansing way that impacts the rest of our life significantly. Now, grief, as I understand it, it's somatic. It's a feeling. It's in our body. It lives in our nervous system. It lives in our joints. It lives in our body, in the various systems in our body, in the tissues, in the cells. And if we don't go deep enough to feel the grief, to feel it all the way through, not only do we build the layers on top of more layers, but as we're walking through life in our current time, we're compounding it with even more grief, until one day the body starts to break down. And this part I know a lot about. I was drawn to the work of Louise Hay in 2010, and Louise Hay talks about our physical body and how it reflects our emotional state. And different parts of our body speak. So grief, when unexpressed, it often shows up in the lungs. Resentment in the joints, a broken heart, chest tightness, heart attack or failure or palpitations, breathing issues. These are just examples. And this is all stuff that I've learnt along the way. And I highly recommend that you do your own research from highly recognized people like Louise Hay, and there are many others. Because unless we are willing to go to these deeper depths, we're never really going to experience the peace and the freedom and the abundance that is available to us because of the iceberg metaphor I shared. We are subconsciously sending out signals of pain, and that's why we receive more pain back. What we give out, we generally tend to get back. When our energy of grief is stuck, your manifestations are going to be stuck too. Your frequency is still tied up to the past. And this doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, by the way. It means that you have been through an awful lot. You've had to hold it all together in a world that hasn't helped you see and feel your own pain. And now, maybe listening to this, it's bringing your attention to what your next level is calling you to go deeper in your healing practice and process, so that you can feel more, to heal more. So 2015, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and leading up to that, life was an absolute nightmare. I couldn't walk by the end of it. I felt like I was literally walking on glass. I felt sick. I felt anxious. My body was screaming in more ways than I have time to share right now. And that's what alerted me. I'd been studying Louise Hay, by the way, for a good 5 to 10 years. So I knew all about the mind-body connection. But it wasn't until my body started screaming that I was actually starting to listen, because I was going downhill and very fast. And I knew I couldn't bypass it anymore. So my journey of healing has been a deepening process. It's only the last year or so I've gone super, super deep on this healing, because the emotion was just bubbling and boiling and simmering beneath the surface. And I knew that it was, because no matter how much journaling I was doing, no matter how much talking about it I was doing, no matter how much reframing I was doing, no matter how much I was looking after my gut health and my mental health that I was doing, it didn't feel like the simmer, the bubbling and the boiling was getting any relief. It may go away momentarily, but then I'd notice it would be coming back in form of irritability, just feeling tired and fatigued and fed up. I felt like I was dragging this body around. And even though the last couple of years I have been so much better than what I was in 2015 to 2018, there's more work to do. There's other symptoms that start to show themselves in various ways, especially noticing that when I get a cough or a cold, it really lingers on my chest, which tells me there's more grief to release and more. And I felt this incredible call to lock myself away in a room with my journal, with a playlist, without any time constraints, and to use some sacred tools in the form of plant medicines in order to help me connect deeper to that pain. Now, that's not something that I'm recommending that you do, because it's not for everybody, but it's definitely worth exploring and worth doing some research around. I qualified in integration coaching with plant medicines, various forms, which I'm happy to share if you want to hop on a one-to-one call. And with my journal and these tools and an eye mask as well, I finally let it all move through me. I opened up the mini ceremony that I had with myself with some journal prompts. And I have to say, I didn't just grieve in those 5 hours. I screamed, I wailed. You know, many times people say they just want to go out into an open space and just scream. But how do we have time to do that? Many of us live so close to our neighbours that if we did that, they'd probably call the police and some other kind of squad. Or the mental institute may have an open door for us. We don't really get that time, but we feel it. We feel like we just want to scream. We feel like we just want to cry. We feel like we just want to express and let it out. And quite often, our life isn't set up in a way that we can do that. There are ways that we can do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing that I have done that. And in that time, I went through a process of understanding myself and what had happened, a deeper level of forgiveness for other people and for myself. I wept for the younger versions of me who had to stay strong, and so much more. I let the grief come on up and move through me in ways that I haven't allowed to happen before. Well, not allowed, I haven't had space or even understanding of how to let it happen before. And in the shedding, I knew that by releasing, there would be new that would naturally come into my life. It's out with the old, it's in with the new. How can you expect something new to come in if you haven't created space for it? And that's the same with our emotions. In fact, that's more important for our emotions. And it's only after allowing myself to go through that was a week ago today. So for those of you who are listening to this, we are now just the beginning of June. I can't think of the exact date off the top of my head. Everything seems like a little bit of a 2nd of June 2025, so whenever you're listening to this. And that was a week ago, so last week in May. And it took me a couple of days just to calibrate after going through such an intense and in-depth healing. And I felt different, because if you think about it, we look at the world through the lens of our own self, through the lens of our own emotions, through the lens of our own pain. So we never really see the world as the world is. We see the world as we are. And sometimes what we see isn't very nice, whether it be in situations or other people. And it's only mirroring to us an aspect of ourselves. And that's quite difficult to palate. And there's a lot more to say about that. But it's very empowering in that. So if I'm looking at the world through the lens of my own grief and my own pain, and I'm able to go through a process to neutralize that grief and that pain, then the lens in which I look at the world through will change. Yeah, absolutely. And there will be things that have always been there that you weren't able to see because your lens before was so cloggy and so foggy and all of that. I'll say good stuff is not so good stuff, really. So moving from grief. So when you move through grief and you meet your grief fully on those deep, painful levels, the wails, the screams, the sobs, that heartfelt expression, you may find that beyond that, you stop people pleasing as much. You stop overworking. You stop overgiving. You stop over needing to control, because all of these are coping mechanisms. While we're holding pain, we find ways to cope. We find ways to be seen. We find ways to get validated. We find ways to be safe. They're not the healthiest of ways. They're coping mechanisms that will help you through something, but they won't help you thrive in the long run. And once we allow this grief to be fully expressed, this hurt and this pain and this anger, we no longer manifest from a place of making up for what we've lost or preemptive striking. In other words, we no longer manifest something because we're scared something else might happen. We no longer put that pressure on ourselves to perform and to be something that we're not and to wear multiple masks. We become more congruent in our energy. We become more aligned in our energy. We become somebody that can hold more love, not just for ourselves, but for other people. Hold more patience, hold more softness, have firmer boundaries, able to communicate, become more successful in our endeavors because we've made room for it. Energetically, we've made room for all of these new and wonderful emotions to come in. We've let go of what no longer belongs. And yeah, we can mourn the grieving of what we are letting go of, especially if it's the grief associated with the loss of a loved one and what was unsaid and what could have been said and how things could have been differently. We let go of that grief. And that's when you become magnetic. Not from force, and not trying to push and make manifestations to happen and say affirmations over 200 times a day in order to make something happen. We become naturally magnetic, effortlessly magnetic, because we're free. We're no longer carrying around the heaviness. We're now embodying emotions like joy and peace and creativity and lightness, and we attract more of which we are. So when I went into my healing ceremony, I asked myself, what are the layers of grief? What are the names of the layers of grief? And I wrote them all down. What version of me never let go fully of the pain? What version of me never got to feel fully? But also, where am I holding this in my body and what is it trying to tell me? What would it feel like to feel safe? What would it feel like to feel safe to let the grief move through me? Now, so many people are afraid to go where I went. And that's understandable, especially if we've had to hold it together for so long. We don't know what allowing ourselves to truly feel and express emotion feels like. It can be super scary. And you don't have to go all in like I did. I've had years of practice of learning to feel my emotions. So I'm ready now to go deeper and to go all in the way that I have done. But you can find gentler ways of starting to tap into the grief and into these emotions. And one day You'll be ready, goggles, snorkel and all, to go all in like I did. So if you or anyone else that you know and love is in the space, I share this podcast with them, it may resonate. Where are you noticing that things are bubbling and boiling beneath the surface and you have to swallow it down in conversation with people? You notice it comes up and then you push it down. Where are you noticing that you are looping and not able to let go of certain things that have happened in the past and they keep coming up time and time again? Where are you noticing your body is screaming at you? Or it might not be screaming, it might just be trying to get your attention, like a sore knee or asthma or sore shoulder, or this is your body talking. It's different diseases in the body have different emotional and psychological counter or components or companions. I think you know what I mean. If you are unsure how to fully process it, I see you. I know how challenging that can be, and actually really super frustrating as well, because you know all of the stuff about the law of attraction and creating the life that you want, but you don't know what the next step is. I call this shadow walking. It's something that I've been doing for myself a long time. I work behind the scenes with clients in private one-to-ones and retreats with the shadow walking work. You don't have to do it alone. It doesn't have to be scary. Yeah, it can be moments of kicking and screaming and shaking your fist to the universe and being the victim, or like my experience last week of purging and shouting and screaming. But it can also be enlightening, eye-opening, energizing, believe it or not. And it can actually, you can have a laugh a little bit along the way as well. So I do offer one-to-one coaching, which is designed to meet you exactly where you are, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, in this grieving process. Or even if you're not sure if it's grief that's holding you back, you can get in touch. I offer free one-to-one consultation. So just email me, salarah@salarahstarre.com. And I guess the last thing that I'd like to say is this isn't about pushing through your pain. It's not about being a martyr and having gone through all of this and look at me, I'm still strong and I'm still standing. Because I tell you what, one day you're going to be called to this in one way or another. And it's about creating space for real healing, for deep release, so that you can become embodied in your power. All those affirmations and all that journaling, all the visualization you do, you won't need to do it anymore because you've embodied it. You've become that. And that's when life feels so much easier. So my website is that's my email address. My website is salarahstarre.com. It's got a lock on it at the moment because I'm doing some work in the background just to upgrade it and update it. But you can reach out to me on Instagram @salarahstarre. And if you want to send me a DM and share with me what's going on for you and to see how I can help you. But until next time, remember, when you feel, you heal. When you honor your grief, when you see your pain, that's when you're going to start to notice shifts, because the lenses in which you view everything through will change. And you deserve that. You deserve a good life. You deserve healthy relationships. You deserve a healthy body. You deserve abundance and peace and a feeling of freedom. You deserve that. And you're not broken. This is all about you becoming an upgraded version of you. Anyway, it's been beautiful to be with you. Until next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. Salarah Starre will be back next week with great insights into the law of attraction. In the meantime, please visit salarahstarre.com.